My name is Leona Hart, 27 years old. I drove to Grandma's house the way you drive to a chapel you haven't entered in a while, hands light on the wheel, stomach tight with a grief that never goes stale. I hadn't moved in yet. I didn't have to. Knowing the key still worked was enough to calm the static in my head. The porch always smelled like lemon oil and old books. The eaves sang when wind ran its finger along their edge. It was the one place that had never lied to me. But there were two unfamiliar cars in the driveway, late model, shiny, smug, and the porch swing was moving, though there was no wind. I rang the bell. A man in his late 30s opened the door. A woman hovered behind him, hand on the frame, protective in a way that told me they were guarding their space. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is my house," I said. The words felt sturdy in my mouth, like a plank you can walk across. "Who are you?" Their glance flicked between each other. The woman offered a brittle little smile. We bought this house last month, from the owner." The world didn't tilt, it snapped, like a thread pulled too tight and sliced clean through. "You what?" "We bought it fair and square," the man said, crossing his arms as if I were trying to sell him something. "Is there a problem?" I stared past him at the entryway. Grandma's umbrella stand, gone, the brass bowl, gone, a beige rug that had never lived there, asserting itself like a stranger's voice in a family story. I checked my email, checked my text, no alerts, no title company messages. But I already knew how it happened. I knew before the app loaded, before my pulse came back. "I'll be in touch," I said. I didn't trust my voice to do anything else. I walked back to the car, sat behind the wheel, and pressed my thumbnail into the leather seam until it hurt. A cardinal hopped on the fence, canted its head, and flew. The swing creaked again. I drove to my parents' house without remembering the lights I passed. Adam was alone on the couch, exactly as always, shoeless, unbothered, scrolling. He was 24, with a teenager's posture and a movie star's confidence in a future that never had to be earned. "What's up?" he said, eyes on his screen. "Where are Mom and Dad?" "Out." "Why?" His thumb didn't stop moving. "Because they sold my house." He blinked at me. "Oh, that." A nod, casual as a yawn. "They'll be back soon." He went back to scrolling. I stood there a full minute, scanning his face for a crack. Nothing. The TV's glow licked his cheekbones like he belonged to it. The door opened. My parents came in laughing at something that died on their tongues when they saw me. "What the hell did you do?" I asked. My father's sigh was the kind you use when the waiter gets your order wrong. "Leona, it was unfair you got the house. Your mother and I had other plans." "Plans," I repeated, as if the syllables could be taken to court. "So you forged documents and sold my inheritance?" "Adam needed a vacation," Dad said, as if reading a grocery list. "He's been stressed. And a car. He has potential." I laughed. It wasn't friendly. "I'm not letting this go." Dad's mouth curled. "Don't be dramatic." "Watch me." I walked out before my mother could try her favorite lines. Be kind. Be patient. Family is complicated. And before Adam could smirk the way he smirks when life confirms it revolves around him. I didn't remember the drive back to my apartment. My hands were winter white on the wheel. In my head, Grandma's voice, warm, tired, ran alongside Dad's, and the difference between love and ownership sounded like a fist on a table. I texted Daniel. "Emergency. Are you at your office?" 10 a.m. tomorrow, he replied. "Bring everything. Will, emails, texts. If a post-it mentions the house, I want it." I stared at the ceiling until 2 a.m., the plaster constellations rearranging into questions I couldn't answer. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what daylight could do. Daniel's office smelled like toner and victory. He's the kind of lawyer who smiles only when something breaks exactly where he predicted. I spread the folder on his desk. Grandma's will, bank statements, old messages where she wrote, "You'll always have a home, baby." He read in silence, tapping once, twice, 3 times when the rhythm pleased him. "Your dad's an idiot," he said finally. "I know," I said, "but you sound like you can prove it." He rotated his monitor toward me. A signature filled the screen. My name, almost. It leaned wrong, like a chair with a short leg. "That isn't mine," I said. "No," Daniel agreed. "Your father forged your consent. And the notary is a regular in complaints. He's been investigated before." A heat rose in my chest that felt like a sun finding its own gravity. "What do we do?" "First, a formal demand," he said, cracking his knuckles. "He has 48 hours to return the sale proceeds. After that, we sue. Fraud, conversion, Anything that sticks. If he can't pay, we go after his house, his savings, all of it. Good, I said. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like the floor. He typed while I texted Evan. Can I come by tonight? He wrote. I'll bring dinner. You shouldn't be alone for this. Evan is the steady kind, the kind who makes tea even when you say you don't want any. We sat on my rug with takeout and silence. He listened while I told him about the driveway, about Adam's shrug, about Dad's line. He has potential, like I hadn't paid my own rent since 19. He reached for my hand and didn't try to fix it. I hate that I'm going to say this, he murmured finally, but my ex, Maya, used to rant about a notary at her old brokerage. Sloppy, already under review. If Daniel said your notary's shady. Could be the same guy, I finished. A small light went on in a hallway I hadn't walked yet. I'm on your side, he said, squeezing my fingers, even if this gets messy. Messy? I echoed. Your dad's going to make it moral. Ungrateful daughter. Family over money. You know the script. I did. I'd learned my lines as a child. Be small. Be useful. Don't make him look bad. I closed my eyes and saw the beige rug that had replaced Grandma's old sisal, and I wanted to rip it to threads. The demand letter went out at noon the next day. At 12:31, my father called. For a second, I considered not answering, but the part of me that wanted a record said yes. I got a letter from a lawyer, he said. His voice was calm over a strained wire. You are being ridiculous. This is a family matter. You don't take family to court. You don't ruin your father's life for money. You didn't just take money, I said. You forged my signature. That's a felony. A long pause, a clink of glass. Then, softer, listen, I'll give you some of the money, not all of it, but you can't negotiate with theft. I'll talk to Adam, he said quickly. We can work something out. I hadn't told him I knew about the forgery. I hadn't said the word notary. He'd leapt there on his own. The cold that slid through me was clean as a blade. You and Adam planned this, I said. He waited one beat too long, then he hung up. The dial tone rang in my ear like a judge's gavel. I drove back to my parents' house that evening because I needed to hear Adam say it. Mom opened the door with a startled, Leona? I walked past her into the living room. Adam was where he belonged, couch, screen, orbiting himself. How long did you know? I asked. He barely glanced up. Know what? That Dad forged my signature. The phone stilled in his hand. His eyes flicked to mine, away, back. The lie collapsed under its own weight. Fine, he exhaled. Yeah, I knew. For how long? Before the sale, he said, voice tight. Dad said it wasn't a big deal. You already have your own place, and you needed a vacation more than I needed my home. I didn't take the money, he snapped. Who booked the Maldives, I asked. Who's driving the car Dad put a down payment on? He flushed. I didn't ask him to. But you didn't say no, I said, because it wasn't your inheritance you were spending. He looked away. It's not like you needed that house. I laughed, the sound hollow and bright. It wasn't about need. It was mine. Grandma left it to me. And you decided your comfort mattered more than her will. I turned for the door. What are you going to do? He called, suddenly uncertain. You'll see, I said. Outside, the air had that thin edge it takes on before rain. I texted Daniel. We go all the way. No settlements, no bargains. If he can't pay, I want his house, his savings, everything the law allows. Done, he replied. They thought this was just about a house. They had no idea they'd lit the match in a room full of paper. The clock on Daniel's demand letter started ticking at noon sharp. 48 hours for my father to wire back $200,000 or face the inside of a courtroom. I could feel each hour like a bead sliding on a wire, inevitable, metallic, counting something down that couldn't be stopped without a clean confession and a bank receipt. Daniel didn't wait for the clock. He went hunting. Walk me through every hand that touched the sale, he said, dry erase marker poised over a glass board. Listing agent, buyer's agent, escrow officer, notary, courier, anyone who held a pen or a file. I gave him names where I had them. He filled gaps with calls that sounded polite and landed like subpoenas. Within 2 hours, he'd pulled a preliminary package, a PDF scan of the recorded deed, the seller's packet with my forged signature, and a notary acknowledgement bearing a stamp that looked like a bruise. There, he said, tapping the screen. Meet Dale K. Wren, our frequent flyer. The acknowledgement block listed a date that made my stomach turn, the week I was out of town at a client conference, posting skyline photos from a hotel window 2 states away. If you ran my location history against the notary's certificate, the lie lit up like fireworks. Wren's commission shows 3 disciplinary reports in the last 5 years, Daniel continued, already writing an outline on the board. 2 for sloppy ID practices, 1 for notarizing outside the signer's presence. Complaints dismissed for insufficient evidence, slippery but not invisible. A memory tugged at my sleeve. Evan's quiet voice in my living room. My ex, Maya, used to rant about a notary at her brokerage, under review. I texted him. What was the name? He answered almost immediately. Pretty sure it was Wren. I stared at the phone. The hallway light in my mind clicked on brighter. Daniel kept going. Here's our working theory. Your father forged your consent and had Wren notarize either a fake ID or a blank acknowledgement he later attached to the deed. The title officer didn't cross-check well because the will gave the appearance of family control. He flipped to a spreadsheet. Proceeds disbursement shows cashier's check to your father's account, then same-day wires to Blue Surf Travel and Darton Motors. That's your brother tanning on the Maldives sand and a down payment for a car. The judge is going to love the vacation, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who'd learned to whistle in a hurricane. We'll love it first, he said. Civil theft, conversion, fraud, punitive damages. We'll add Wren as a co-defendant and force discovery from the title company. People get chatty when their E&O policy is at stake. I sent Evan a brief update and tried not to think about how the past had sent me a small favor through his ex. A narrative can hold many contradictions. It still felt strange. At 1:04 p.m., my father called again. I let it go to voicemail. Daniel gestured, put him on speaker. I pressed play. You're humiliating us, Dad said, voice taut. Your mother is sick over this. This is not how family behaves. We can repay some. Daniel held up a finger. Rewind the last bit. I scrubbed back 3 seconds. We can repay some. Wren said the acknowledgement is solid. My father coughed into the phone, the sound of a man tripping on his own alibi. And anyway, the sale's closed. Daniel's eyebrows rose in something like delight. There it is. Will a voicemail like that matter? I asked. It won't prove the forgery, he said, already exporting the audio, but it proves knowledge. He knows who the notary is, he knows what piece we're coming for, and he called the acknowledgement solid. People who did nothing wrong don't talk like that. I forwarded the file to myself, to Daniel, to a folder named House. Evidence I wasn't going to lose. At 5:37 p.m., Mom called. I let it ring, then answered on the final buzz. Leona, she said, voice quivering with old rehearsals. We can talk about this. You don't need to drag your father into court. He was just trying to help your brother. My brother is 24 and booked a 3-week trip with my inheritance, I said, keeping my tone level the way Daniel had taught me. Dad forged my signature. That's a felony. Helping Adam isn't the same as stealing from me. You have your own place, she said weakly, as if real estate multiplied love on contact. Your grandmother's will. It was unfair. Grandma raised me, I said softly. She knew what she was doing. Choosing me wasn't unfair. Ignoring her was. She didn't answer. I could hear a murmur in the background, my father's baritone coaching lines into her ear. We'll make this right, she said at last, brittle with borrowed courage. Just don't embarrass us. The letter gave 48 hours, I said. You've used 5. When I hung up, my hands were steady. My heart dragged behind them like a clanging bucket. Evan came over with the grocery bag. He busied himself with garlic and olive oil, the way people who love you make a room smell like something you can live through. We didn't talk about court. We talked about my grandmother's zinnias, about the way the porch steps sagged, and nobody ever fixed them because the sag was part of the story. Normal held us like a sling. On the second morning, Daniel pushed the next domino. Wren's office refused to connect me, he said, eyes glinting. So I called as a buyer's attorney and asked if he had bandwidth for a rush signing. He smirked. He does. He'll be at Caring's title at 3. We'll serve him in the lobby with a notice to preserve all journals and audio. If he so much as touches a shredder, I'll have a motion for sanctions on the judge's desk before his coffee cools. Do not get arrested, I said, half serious. He grinned in that way only a man with malpractice insurance can grin. I only scare people with the law. I don't break it. I texted Evan a heads up and got a reply I wasn't expecting. Maya just pinged me. She heard rumors someone's pulling Wren's files. She said, about time. Then, a beat later, she asked if she should reach out to your lawyer directly. I told her only if you're okay with it. I stared at the screen. The idea of opening a doorway to Evan's past made something small and adolescent stir under my ribs, but the truth wanted every clean line it could get. Give her Daniel's office line, I wrote, and tell her thank you. I meant it. At 2:51 p.m., my father called again, then again at 2:52, then 2:53. I didn't answer. At 2:58, a text. This is your last chance to stop this nonsense. At 3:02, another. You'll regret making enemies. The word he didn't write was family. He'd already swapped the language to match the battlefield he preferred. Daniel texted a photo at 3:17. Ren, mid-stride in a lobby, eyes narrowed at a process server's envelope. Under it, preservation notice served. He looked like a man who keeps sloppy books. The 48 hours expired while I sat at my kitchen table forcing myself to eat toast that tasted like paper. At 12 p.m. on the third day, Daniel hit send on a complaint thick enough to prop a door open. Fraud, civil theft, conversion, forgery, conspiracy, plus a request for a lis pendens to cloud any attempt by my father to shuffle assets out of sight. If he tries to hide money now, Daniel said, he gives us our second case. People never stop digging once they find a shovel. I walked to the window and watched a pair of kids race scooters down the sidewalk, hair streaming, voices high. For a second, I felt 12 again, sitting on Grandma's porch, listening to the radio fizz and pop while she mended a hem and told me that homes remember who loves them. The phone buzzed one more time. A final voicemail. I put it on speaker. You think a judge will take your side? My father asked, voice hoarse with something that sounded like lost altitude. You're ungrateful. I kept this family together. You're tearing it apart for a pile of bricks. Play it again, Daniel said calmly from across the table, already noting the timestamp. He didn't need to. We both knew the line I would carry into court like a torch, a pile of bricks, as if a house that raised me and a woman who loved me were debris. I saved the file, labeled it with today's date, and closed my eyes. In the quiet behind my lids, Grandma's hallway unfurled exactly where I left it, paint nicked, pictures straight, sunlight pooling on the floorboards like something generous and stubborn. When I opened them, Daniel slid a printed schedule across the table. Temporary hearing set. Expedited discovery granted. Subpoena to title company tomorrow at 9. Deposition notice to Ren pending. He capped his pen. Doors are opening, he said. Good, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm done knocking. The day after the complaint was filed, the air in my apartment changed. It wasn't quieter, it was denser, like the atmosphere before lightning. Everything looked the same. Same mug by the sink, same half-read novel, but it all hummed with the tension of something finally set in motion. Daniel texted at 8:07 a.m. They've been served. It was 2 words, but they carried the weight of years. By 8:09, my phone started ringing. Mom first, then Dad, then Adam. I silenced all 3. At 8:13, Dad left a voicemail. You're really doing this? You're destroying this family, Leona. We could have fixed this privately. You have no idea what kind of damage you're causing. His voice cracked halfway through. It wasn't sadness, it was fear. I recognized it because I'd heard the same tone years ago when he found out Grandma left the house to me instead of him. He couldn't stand losing control, especially to a woman he still saw as a child. By noon, my mother was at my door. She looked smaller somehow, like the fight had been drained out of her. Or maybe she'd just handed it all to him. Please, Leona, she said, drop this. He's your father. I stepped aside, letting her in. He's also a forger and a thief. She flinched. You don't mean that. I do. She walked through my living room like she didn't recognize it. Her eyes landed on the family photo I still hadn't taken down. The one from before Grandma died, before the hierarchy of favorites became law. Adam's been crying, she said finally. He's embarrassed. He should be, I said. He spent stolen money. He didn't know what your father was doing. I laughed softly. He admitted he did, Mom. To my face. Said it wasn't a big deal. Her lips pressed thin, trembling. You think court will make this better? You'll just humiliate all of us. You'll ruin your father. Mom, I said gently, he ruined himself. Something in her face hardened. He did what he thought was fair. That's the thing, I said. He thought fairness meant doing whatever made him feel powerful. She didn't answer, just walked to the door, paused, and whispered, You're not the girl Grandma raised. She'd never take her own father to court. She's exactly who taught me to, I said, to stand up when people use love as a weapon. She left without looking back. By the end of the week, the case hit public record, and family phones started glowing with gossip. My Aunt Lillian texted, Sweetheart, this can't be true, right? Your dad said you misunderstood the paperwork. I replied with a single attachment, the forged signature, my name, bent at the wrong angle. No one texted back after that. Friday morning, Daniel called. Defense counsel filed for a motion to delay, he said. Standard tactic. They're buying time. Let them buy, I said. They'll pay interest in shame. He chuckled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I smiled faintly. You're safe. You send invoices. That afternoon, Evan stopped by. He set 2 cups of coffee on my table, no words needed. Daniel's filing went through, he asked. I nodded. Dad's panicking. Mom's playing the martyr. Adam's pretending he's Switzerland. He hesitated. Maya called me. I raised an eyebrow. Your ex? He nodded. She wanted to let you know she spoke to Daniel, confirmed the notary's history. She also found an internal email. Wren had been reprimanded for notarizing blank acknowledgments. I blinked. She found proof? Enough to scare him, Evan said. Daniel said he looked like he aged 5 years when she mentioned that email. I exhaled. Tell her thank you, seriously. He nodded. She said she hopes you win, that she's seen men like your dad think they can outsmart paper. For a second, we just sat there in silence, the kind that holds equal parts relief and disbelief. Evan reached for my hand. You okay? I stared at our fingers. I don't know if okay's the right word, but I feel lighter, like the truth's finally breathing. By the next week, my father had stopped pretending this was about misunderstanding. His tone changed from guilt to rage. He called Daniel directly, left a message laced with venom. Daniel played it for me over speakerphone. You think you can intimidate me? I've built everything in that house. That girl's just jealous her brother's worth more. You'll lose, and when you do, I'll make sure she pays for every cent she's cost me. Daniel stopped the recording and raised an eyebrow. He just handed us Exhibit A for malicious intent. Let him keep talking, I said. Every word digs his hole deeper. Then came the motion hearing. I walked into the courthouse with Daniel beside me, his confidence steady as steel. My father was already seated at the defendant's table, his lawyer whispering furiously into his ear. He looked up when I entered. I expected anger. What I saw instead was shock, like he hadn't believed I'd really go through with it. His eyes narrowed. I held his gaze until he looked away. Daniel leaned toward me. He's rattled. The judge entered, robes flowing, voice calm and deliberate. Heart versus heart. Motion to dismiss denied. Temporary restraining order granted. The sale proceeds, and assets are to remain frozen pending trial. I exhaled. Dad's lawyer objected, of course, citing family privacy. The judge cut him off. Fraud isn't private, Mr. Abbott. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. My father sat rigid, knuckles white, against the table. When the hearing adjourned, I gathered my bag and turned toward the exit. He caught up with me in the hallway. You're destroying us, he hissed. Do you even know what happens when this hits the papers? When your brother can't get hired because of you? I turned slowly. You should have thought about that before you forged my name. I was trying to protect this family, he said, his voice breaking into a half plea, half threat. By stealing from it? He took a step closer. You can stop this, Leona. Drop it. We'll settle quietly. I didn't let him finish. You had 48 hours to fix it quietly. Now you can fix it publicly. Daniel appeared behind me like clockwork. Mr. Hart, if you continue to harass my client outside of counsel, we'll add witness intimidation to the list. Dad glared at him, then at me. You'll regret this. No, I said, you will. He stormed away. That night, I sat on my porch with Evan. The city hummed below, oblivious to how much had changed. He leaned back. You know, when I met you, I thought you were calm, rational, the kind of person who keeps the peace. I was, I said, until they mistook it for weakness. He smiled, small and admiring. You're terrifying in the best way. We laughed softly, but the sound carried something heavier underneath. Because the next part wouldn't just be about paperwork, it would be about legacy. About what Grandma's name meant when the world finally heard it again. The trial was coming. And this time, Dad wouldn't be able to talk his way out of the truth. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and nerves. It was one of those bright mornings that felt too ordinary for what was about to happen. Sunlight spilling across polished benches, the shuffle of papers echoing in the air. Daniel was calm beside me, as if he'd been born for rooms like this. His tie was perfectly straight, his pen aligned with his notes. Remember, he said under his breath, we're not here to convince your father. We're here to convince 12 strangers that truth still means something. I nodded. My palms were steady, but only because they'd run out of tremors. When the bailiff called our case, Hart versus Hart, a murmur rippled through the room. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Family versus family, daughter versus father. The kind of story tabloids loved and normal people whispered about over coffee. Dad walked in looking smaller than I remembered. His suit didn't fit right, too loose around the shoulders, too long at the cuffs. Adam followed behind him like a shadow, avoiding my eyes. Mom wasn't there. That said enough. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Daniel started strong. He told the jury this wasn't about greed or rebellion. It was about theft and betrayal. About a forged signature, a stolen inheritance, and a man who thought family made him untouchable. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't need to. The evidence was theater enough. He projected the will on the courtroom screen. Grandma's handwriting, elegant and looping. I leave my home at 42 Claremont to my granddaughter, Leona Hart. Then the deed, my name scrawled in a forgery that slanted wrong. The notary seal belonging to Dale K. Wren, the same one Maya had helped expose. Daniel turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not a clerical error. That's a crime. Dad's attorney, a sleek man named Abbott, tried to spin it differently. He painted me as a bitter daughter, misunderstanding a family arrangement. He said my father merely acted in the best interest of redistributing family assets. He said I was tearing the family apart for money. Daniel waited until Abbott was done, then stood again. If family means forgery, I suppose we're redefining words today. A soft chuckle rippled through the room. Even the judge hid a smirk behind his notes. When I took the stand, the courtroom quieted like someone had turned down the volume on the world. I told them about Grandma, how she'd raised me when my parents were too busy, how her house wasn't just walls but safety, how I'd driven there that afternoon expecting comfort and found strangers living inside. I described the confusion, the disbelief, the man at the door saying, "We bought this fair and square." I told them about Adam's indifference, Dad's calm cruelty, the words, "Adam needed a vacation." The jury's faces softened. One woman at the far end wiped her eyes. Daniel walked me through the documents next. The forged signature, the notary's disciplinary record, the bank transfers. He clicked to a statement from Blue Surf Travel Agency. 2 first-class tickets to the Maldives. Booked in Adam's name. Paid in full from my father's account the day after the house sale cleared. The courtroom gasped like one organism. Then another slide, a receipt from Darton Motors. Down payment on a sports car. The memo line read, "For Adam." Abbott objected, muttering something about irrelevance. The judge overruled him before he could finish. Dad took the stand next. He tried to wear humility, but arrogance seeped through every crack. It wasn't theft, he said. It was a family decision. Leona already has her own apartment, her job, her life. Adam needed help. What's family for, if not to help? Daniel leaned forward. Family, Mr. Hart, is not a bank. Dad straightened. I didn't forge anything. Daniel clicked his remote. The enlarged image of the signature appeared again. Can you explain why your daughter's name appears on this deed in handwriting consistent with your own financial forms? Dad's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying, sir. I'm showing. The room broke into whispers. Abbott objected again. The judge silenced him with a glare. Mr. Hart, she said evenly, answer the question. Dad swallowed. I signed what the notary told me to. So you admit you signed your daughter's name? Daniel asked. His silence was louder than any confession. After that, the defense crumbled. Abbott tried to deflect blame onto the notary, saying Wren handled the paperwork without oversight. But Daniel had already subpoenaed Wren's testimony. Wren looked nervous on the stand, a man realizing his career was ending in real time. He admitted that he notarized the document at Mr. Hart's request and without the daughter present. Daniel asked, Did you verify her identity? Wren's voice dropped to a whisper. No. Did you know it was illegal to notarize a signature without the signer? Yes. Did you do it anyway? A pause. Yes. The gavel hit the bench once. The sound was final. When closing arguments began, Daniel's voice filled the room like calm fire. My client didn't come to court because she wanted to. She came because she was left no choice. This isn't just a case of stolen property. It's a case of stolen trust. Her father took advantage of her silence, believing she'd value peace more than justice. He was wrong. He looked at the jury, his tone dropping to almost a whisper. Sometimes the only way to honor family is to stop letting them hurt you. The deliberation didn't take long. When the jury returned, I could read it in their faces before the foreperson spoke. Guilty, she said, on all counts. My father's head dropped like the weight of his own arrogance finally caught up to him. The judge's sentencing was swift. 5 years for fraud and forgery, with restitution for the stolen proceeds. Mom gasped somewhere behind me, a sound halfway between horror and disbelief. Adam sat frozen, pale, staring at his hands like they'd betrayed him too. When the gavel struck for the last time, the echo filled my chest like thunder that had finally found somewhere to land. Outside, the reporters waited. I didn't speak to them. Mom caught up to me on the courthouse steps, her face streaked with tears. "How could you do this?" she hissed. "He's your father." I turned to her, and I was his daughter. That didn't stop him, did it? Her lip quivered. "You're not family anymore." I smiled, tired but certain. Then maybe I finally got promoted to peace. Adam appeared behind her, silent. His eyes met mine, hollow, uncertain. "Are you happy now?" he asked quietly. I studied him. "You tell me, Adam, you got your vacation. You got your car. Was it worth Grandma's house?" He looked away. "It wasn't my idea." "No," I said, "but you didn't mind being a passenger." He didn't answer, just muttered, "You won," before walking away. I watched them go, two people who had built their comfort on other people's sacrifices, and realized I didn't feel angry anymore. Winning wasn't satisfying, it was cleansing, like exhaling something poisonous I'd been holding in too long. The verdict didn't echo forever, it just faded, like a storm that wrecks the coastline and then moves on, leaving silence and salt in the air. My father went to prison 2 weeks later. There was no spectacle, no weeping crowd, just a man in a suit that no longer fit stepping into a van that smelled like surrender. I didn't watch the transfer. Daniel did. He texted me after. "It's done." And that was that. The aftermath unfolded slowly, quietly, almost politely. Mom and Adam tried to keep their distance at first, but word travels faster than shame. Aunt Lillian called one morning just to say, "We all know the truth now, sweetheart. Don't let their noise drown that out." It was strange. For years, I'd been the black sheep, the troublemaker, the daughter who didn't play along. Now, I was the one people called when they wanted to tell the truth out loud. Even my cousin Ray, who used to defend my father at every family gathering, sent a message that said, he always talked about fairness, but it was always just his version of it. They were starting to see it, all of them. Mom and Adam, on the other hand, were falling apart. Without my father's income or assets, they couldn't afford their house. The court had seized the savings account, and the rest went into restitution. They ended up staying with my Aunt Linda for a while, a woman who believed in kindness but not excuses. When Mom complained to her, Aunt Linda said, "I'm letting you stay here because I have a heart, not because I agree with what you did." That shut her up fast. By the time they moved out, they'd downsized to a 2-bedroom apartment in the older part of town. No more ocean views, no new cars, just cracked paint and the kind of silence that can't be filled by denial. Adam tried to play it cool. New haircut, cheap sunglasses, fake confidence, but I could see it in his eyes when we crossed paths at the grocery store one afternoon. He avoided me, of course, but his cart was full of discount noodles and off-brand cereal, and it told me everything I needed to know. As for me, I bought Grandma's house back. The day the sale finalized, Daniel handed me the keys with a grin. "Full circle," he said. I drove there in silence. The new owners had taken care of it. Fresh paint, trimmed lawn, but it still smelled faintly of lemon and dust, like time had just been waiting for me to come home. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the way you'd touch the arm of someone you'd missed for years. In the living room, I ran my fingers over the old wooden coffee table. The scratch was still there, the one I made when I was 7, racing toy cars while Grandma laughed from the kitchen. I could almost hear her voice. "You can fix wood, but don't fix everything. Some scars are just memories." For the first time in months, I let myself cry. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt safe enough to. A month later, Mom called. The first time since the trial. At first, I thought she dialed me by accident, but then she sighed and said, "Your father wants to see you." I waited for the rest, the guilt, the manipulation, but there was only quiet. "Why now?" I asked. She hesitated. "He's been asking for months." I said no, but maybe you should hear him out. Maybe she was tired, maybe she wanted to see if I still cared. Either way, I agreed. Not for him, for closure. Visiting him was surreal. The man who used to fill every room with authority now sat across from me in gray, his shoulders rounded, his hands twitching against the table. He didn't start with excuses. He just said, "I messed up." I didn't interrupt. He kept talking. I thought I was doing the right thing, helping Adam, keeping peace, but I was just feeding my pride. I let favoritism turn into blindness. His voice cracked. I thought you'd never fight back, that you were too gentle. That's on me. For a long moment, we just sat there, the air heavy with everything we hadn't said for years. Finally, he looked up. Can you forgive me? It would have been easier to say no. But holding anger is like holding a knife by the blade. It cuts you long before it hurts anyone else. So I nodded. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean we can go back. He nodded, like he'd already accepted that answer before I said it. I left without looking back. I haven't gone since. Mom still refuses to speak to me. That's fine. Adam pretends I don't exist. That's fine too. Because peace doesn't need witnesses. It just needs distance. Now, every morning, I make coffee in Grandma's kitchen. The light hits the counter the same way it did when I was a kid. The floor still creaks in the hallway. And sometimes when the breeze slips through the window, I swear I can hear her humming that old tune she used to play on the radio. I kept one of her old notes on the fridge, a scrap of paper she'd written before she passed. Don't let anyone take what's yours, even if they share your name. She knew. Somehow she knew this would happen. And I finally understood. She didn't leave me a house. She left me a backbone. That's the real inheritance. And no one can forge that.